Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a Premier Field Engineer specializing in management technologies. Today's discussion focuses on ConfigMgr current branch and specifically the CMPivot feature. This is one that I've wanted to get to for a bit now. Really exciting feature, one of the most exciting ones I've seen of late come out, so really excited to share it with you today. As we begin our discussion, is just a note, right? So this session is based on ConfigMgr 1902. So the feature CMPivot was introduced in ConfigMgr 1806. There have been some improvements as we've gone along, as we'll detail as we get toward the end of the session. This is 1902. So if you're not on 1902 yet, then some of the things that you will see won't be true for you. Get to 1902 as quick as you can because there's real goodness that has been added along the way. Right, a lot of changes, frankly, in 1810. And also, there's really excellent documentation on CMPivot from the documentation team. So if you, in fact, this presentation is based on some of those examples and so forth. So if you want to review that documentation, definitely take a look. It's worth your time. So the agenda. What is CMPivot and why we care? And then we're going to really pull the covers back on CMPivot, talk about the requirements, some of the limitations, really talk about the components, then the real meat of this, getting into a walkthrough, watching CMPivot happen or work in action, as we call it. Some of the history of CMPivot, that's the building up from 1806 to where we are today, 1902 as of this recording. Wrap up with some troubleshooting tips and tricks, and we'll be done. All right, so what is CMPivot? CMPivot, two words you have not historically seen that much with ConfigMgr, real-time data collection. And that's really exciting because for a while, ConfigMgr really was, for years, ConfigMgr really wasn't a real-time solution. There was always a delay. Whether you wanted to, whatever you wanted to do, there was a delay. We started to see some real-time features come in with some of the client actions that we could run, pulling policy, restarting a device, the high-speed notification channel indicating clients have communicated recently, and so forth. CMPivot absolutely uses those channels to be able to collect real-time data. Now, that's, of course, obviously limited to clients that are connected and online at the time of the query. We'll detail some more about that a little bit later. But if a client is online and connected, absolutely real-time data is pulled back. You might ask, what about clients that are remote but connected through the Cloud Management Gateway? Absolutely supported. I'll say that a couple of times through here probably. But yeah, that works great. Just like the other client notifications, the health checkmark, the green checkmarking collections, all that works through the Cloud Management Gateway, so does CMPivot, scripts, and so forth, right? Very powerful and flexible data analytics. So we're looking at real-time data. We can pivot on that data to drill in deeper, get more granular, focused information if we want, and so on. You'll see that as we go through the examples, and the fact that it's real-time is pretty phenomenal. We've had the ability to collect data for a while. We've had inventory and so forth, but that's always usually delayed for most systems that we're checking. That's not true for CMPivot, as you'll see. And then, yes, there is a query language that you have to be familiar with to use CMPivot. It's not difficult. If you're familiar at all with SQL, this will look very familiar. If you're familiar with PowerShell, even more than SQL, it will look fairly familiar and readable, right? And so what we base the query language on, frankly, is the log analytics query language, a subset of the log analytics query language. So if you know log analytics query language already, then you're ready for CMPivot. If you don't, and you spend the time to learn the query language in CMPivot, then that just sets you up well for being able to do queries in log analytics, right? Again, you'll see all this as we go along. So why CMPivot? Well, again, real-time data collection, that's huge, right, in the product to be able to do that and put your real information real-time at your fingertips. I think of so many scenarios, right? Just to pick one. Folks who will be doing a deployment of any kind, whether it be an application, a package, a task sequence, a software update, whatever, right? And they're looking for real-time information about how much saturation is this deployment actually hitting, right? Maybe there's a really important business need to get a particular deployment done, and you want to know how effective am I getting that deployment out to my environment. You used to have to wait for detail to come back from the client and for the system status to update and so on and so on. And you can still do that, but now that we have the ability to query systems real time, we can get ahead of even the information we've historically had to be able to get real time data. And there's so many other examples, right? Data is always current. Again, inventory data is good. Real time is better, and that's what you get with CMPivot. Mentioned it already, say it again. Cloud Management Gateway. CMPivot queries and data acquisition works with online clients, even through the Cloud Management Gateway. No problem at all there, just a very seamless thing. Log Analytics, again, supports a subset of the Log Analytics query language, so there's good commonality there. And flexibility, right? The data collection analysis, you can do it just the way you want it. You can tailor it to your needs. Probably a lot easier than writing your own custom report to use, and so forth, right? So really, really, really useful. What are the requirements then of CMPivot, right? So ConfigMgr 1806, that's where CMPivot was first introduced. Definitely gets better in 1810, and then if you have a CAS, it gets even better in 1902. When you are on a certain version of a site, then you want your clients to be at that same version, because otherwise they will not be able to match the capabilities of CMPivot at the site level. You'll see that as we get into some of the history and so forth. Right? You do need certain permissions. You need permissions on the SMS script object, at least read permissions. You need run scripts capabilities on collections if you're going to run scripts, which you very likely will. Inventory reports, ability to read those, and then access to the default scope and so forth. Minimum of PowerShell 4, right? PowerShell 5 in order to do things like gather data for administrators or connections or ipconfig or SMB config, right? As is on the screen. And then because we're executing scripts as a part of CMPivot, there is sometimes security software that gets in the way of allowing script execution. Need to make sure that script execution out of the script store folder, as you see, is allowed and not blocked, and then we are good to go. There are some limitations, right? So the way CMPivot works is focused at the primary site level. So if you have a standalone primary site, no problem there. If you have a hierarchy with a CAS, then no, all of the data pull will happen at the primary site, meaning the primary site is where the actual queries are executed, and the clients that are attached to that primary site are the ones that receive those query executions. So for example, if you had a collection at a primary site that also has devices in it that belong to and are assigned to another site, then those devices at another site will not receive the CMPivot query from the primary site itself, right? Only the clients that are directly assigned. Now, all of this gets easier in 1902, right? We think of multiple primary sites only when you have a CAS. So if you have a CAS and you're on 1810 as an example, you can still use CMPivot, but you have to go down to the individual primary sites to interact. If you're at 1902, then we support running CMPivot directly from the CAS. The execution is still primary site centric, but we will farm that out to the individual primary sites and manage it from the CAS, no problem, right? I'll say this again too. You might wonder, how does that query get down to those primary sites from the CAS? Do we use SQL replication? The answer is no. We use the high-speed notification channel even there, right? So 1902, a lot of goodness, especially for those that want to use CMPivot and have a hierarchy. So customization, right? You can customize some things, but you cannot customize other things. So in terms of things you can't customize would be the entity properties. Now, we haven't even seen CMPivot yet, so you don't really get what the entity properties are yet. Maybe. I'll show that to you in a minute. Also, the columns for results or actions on devices, you can't customize those. Again, you haven't seen it yet. Does it make sense? Maybe, but I'll show it to you in a minute, and hopefully it will. Another little small one, CMPivot and the ConfigMgr console. Only one instance of CMPivot can run at the same time on a computer that is running the ConfigMgr console. So that won't be very many computers, but just know that if your system is running the ConfigMgr console, there is that limitation. Right? Now, if you're still running 1806, and again, this is based on 1902, so hopefully most folks have upgraded already since 1902 is out from 1806, but if you're still running 1806, there are some, one known limitation. If you're querying for administrators entity, right, the administrators class, the group actually has to be named administrators, and it cannot be a localized name. Very specific, kind of limitation, but one to be aware of, right? Okay. And then the components of CMPivot. So there's a few, just to mention the CMPivot node itself, and that's launched from a device collection list, right? We will use the high-speed communication channel, so that needs to be functional and workable, and you can make sure that is just by looking for the green check mark inside a collection or on devices or whatever. And then state messages. Now, again, state messages was I haven't said it yet, but state messages, if you're on 1806, you'll execute the CMPivot query, and then the query results will come back by state messages. If you're on 1810 forward, then that's not true all the time. If you have the query payload, the result set coming back is less than 80 KB, then we're going to use the high-speed notification channel. If it's greater than 80 KB, that query set will be returned by state messages, right? So again, a couple of few things. If you're on 1806, move forward, and a lot of good changes in 1810 and beyond, which you'll see a little bit. Okay, so now to the fun stuff, actually walking through CMPivot. So let me pull in my lab. All right. There it is coming onto the screen, and I'm going to launch the ConfigMgr console. Thought it was already there, but we will launch it anyway. And then we're going to just go directly to Assets and Compliance into one of my device collections. So here's my device collection, and I have a collection named CMPivot Demo. But CMPivot works with any collection, really, right? So right away, you can know whether your permissions are right. If you click on Collection and you do not see Start CMPivot, then something's not connected correctly, right? Or on the right-click menu, if that's easier for you, Start CMPivot. Either way, right? So I'm just going to launch the CMPivot console, Start CMPivot, and we're just going to spend some time walking through the console, what it looks like, and so on. So let me just tour you through this. So the top left, CMPivot, parentheses, CMPivot Demo. So in parentheses is the name of the collection that CMPivot is currently focused on, right? So if I change collections, that name will change to whatever new collection I'm on. I'm actually going to go to the All Systems collection here in a minute, and you'll see that change. Right? Now, the entity pane. So I mentioned entity a couple of times. This is what I'm talking about. These are the various items that you can actually query on, right? And CMPivot makes available. So these are default, things, and if you had your custom inventory classes, you would see those here as well. But these are the entities. So while we're here, let me just show you, I don't know, let's pick one, maybe BitLocker. So I'm going to right-click, and you can see some of the options that are actually on BitLocker. So let's talk through those first. You can insert, and insert would just basically place this entity inside of a custom query, maybe that you're working on, whatever. If you want to look at all of the systems, kind of the default BitLocker configuration and so on, see all the properties, just do query all. And so you see that now CMPivot is going out and putting that query against the collection CMPivot Demo. There's 4 systems that I have there. All 4 of those systems are online, so I would expect all 4 of them to come back and give me a result. 2 of them actually failed, which that's what I expected here, and 2 of them came back positively, right? So you see the results pane. I'll get to this and review this more in a minute, but you can already tell what's here. Query completed on 2 of the 4 clients. We have 0 clients offline, and we do have 2 failures, right? We can go into query summary, and we can see the failures. So come back to that, right? And also, while I'm on BitLocker, I could do query by device, which would group the devices differently. So watch the query window when I hit this, and you'll just see that the query has changed. And so now I am grouping by the device ID and so forth for that particular query, right? So that's kind of how that works. I can expand BitLocker, and then I will see all of the properties or entities, I guess, and the properties of them that are here. I can also right-click there, but I can't query for those. I can just insert those into a query that I might be working on, building, etc. Right? All right, cool. Now, still staying with just exploring the CMPivot console right now. On the Home tab, that's right here. I went ahead and jumped forward to the Query tab, but on the Home tab, this is a great set of documentation that can be used to start your learning and how the query should be built. And here's an example query that actually is functional and I can run here. So let me just go ahead and do that. So it'll put that query in. This is going to run. All of the systems that I have are virtual machines, so they should all come back as having a manufacturer like Microsoft that you will see in just a minute, right? So we'll give that just a second. There they are, right? And then I can do interesting things within this query that you will see, or this query result set that you will see in a minute. So one thing I can do, let me just show you in the Query tab. So let me go back to the Home tab and just scroll down. Here's all the entities. Some of them are underlined, so you can just click on them and have them actionable. But that's good to read up on to just get an idea of CMPivot. Let me go back to the Query window, or the Query tab. So I did just execute this query. Now that I have it, I have a lot of flexibility in this tab. I have right-click options on the device itself. So I have pivot to options, where if I want to look at a specific device that I found and then pivot into one of these other entities, I can do that. I can run a script on a device. So maybe I've found a particular device in a condition that I need to intervene on. I can run a script, assuming that I have that script defined already. I can run remote control. I can run Resource Explorer. Sometimes, as I'll show you in a minute, you might run a query to get a list of devices that match a condition, and then you want to take action on those in bulk. So I can bulk multi-select, right-click. The only option I have at that stage is to run script, but at least I can take action on the whole lot at the same time. Well, just like I have right-click options on the device or device column, I have right-click options on the other non-device columns as well. So, for example, let's see, I have these different domains, Tailspin Toys, or these are work groups, right? So I can right-click in here, and I can copy, show devices with, show devices without, filter by, or Bing it, right? So if there's an error code or something in here that I want to look up, I can just directly ask what that error code might mean, see if there's anything that helps me just directly within this window, right? If I want to right-click, I can, again, group by device, sort, whatever I want up here. But let's just go ahead and say show devices with the work group as the domain. So I'll just pivot, and these are the two devices, right, that are in that work group configuration. You see that your query is adjusting as we go along. So it's really cool to be able to learn some of the query language by just adjusting and letting the query update and kind of taking a look at what's there. Okay? So in terms of the query results, that's what we're looking at. We can go to Query Summary and kind of see what actually has happened. In this case, success, failure, offline, whatever. I don't have any fails or offline. Let me actually go back and run this query, because I will have some failed, two failed and two successes, and then we'll look at the query summary as soon as that completes. All right, so we have it, right? So I do have query summary. I have 2 failed and 2 that were successful. So if I want to know why, I just click on number 2, and it will say why exactly this actually failed, invalid namespace, at least in this case, right? So very useful to be able to drill around, not really much work to be able to get some really useful data out of this. So staying with the CMPivot window, we have the status bar. I've already shown you the status bar, where we see the actual result set, how many of the targeted clients actually executed the query. In this case, 2 of them did, 2 of them were successful, 2 of them failed. No clients were offline, right? Again, just a reference to the collection that I'm on, the ID of the query and so forth, a couple of objects that I'm running, and so forth, right? Okay, and then another thing, let me let me shift to all systems for a minute. So if I go to the all systems collection here, I definitely have systems that are not even clients that I still will factor in when I run my CMPivot. And so I'll just do something simple for this one, maybe, I don't know, BIOS, and run that one, right? So query all. And so this query should run pretty quickly, except that it won't run on all of them. You already see some warnings because you have an offline client, you have other systems that aren't clients at all, and then we'll get a stretch of green where the ones that are clients actually return the results, and so forth. So it just helps you. And also notice the name change up here for the collection that I'm focused on, and so on. And one other thing that I will, or two other things, I guess, that I will draw your attention to, create collection. I can go create a collection based on the results here. In fact, let me go do that real quick. And I want to just show it as test. All right, and then click next. And then the membership rules, notice all of the membership rules are direct, right? Because they're coming directly from my query results. And then I go forward like normal, and I create my collection, right? I also want to show you the limiting collection is going to be all systems. So I'll exit from here now. And so know that whenever you build your collection, it's going to be a direct membership collection. It's going to be limited to all systems. And make your decision appropriately. Do you want to create a collection that might have 30,000 systems in it? Maybe, maybe not, right? Could be useful to you. Probably won't be doing that as just the majority of your collection creation. So probably would be okay in certain circumstances, but again, make your decision. You can export the results to a file, to the clipboard, whatever. You can go ahead in here and have your favorites if you wanted to. I don't have any at this stage, but FYI, right? Okay. All right, so that's kind of looking at the CMPivot dashboard, right? Now let's look at entities, right? So entities over here, the documentation does a really good job of showing us, you know, kind of how to interact with these and what they are. I want to pick just a few. And device, like Microsoft. I've already shown you that one. Let me pull it up again. So sticking with the documentation, I'll go back to my Home tab, and then here's that query that I've already run. So this works out pretty quickly, and I'm still in the All Systems collection, so it's going to have a few systems that don't come back. In fact, let me, for being in the right place purposes, go back to Start CMPivot, and then go back to my documentation and run this again. And so it, again, will give me the 4 systems that are in my collection. All of them are active and so forth. So this is a really good way, again, in the documentation section, kind of get used to your environment, start to look at what's there, and we see the query results and so on. But there's some other interesting ones here. Let's just scroll down. Let's see. If I've shown you BIOS, I'll run it again. So I'll just click on BIOS, and it's going to summarize again by device, or count by device, by manufacturer, whatever. And we'll see the results, right? And so as soon as we get the manufacturer, I see 2 BIOS here, American Megatrends and then Microsoft. So if I want to know what the one American Megatrends device is, I just click on the count. It'll show me, oh, this is the one that's actually using American Megatrends as the BIOS type. And other things. So another one that's interesting, and I could just sit here all day and do these, but another one that can come in very handy, and it's really easy to manipulate and work with right away, is registry. So I'm just going to run that. And notice it just puts registry, the query language is just to tell CMPivot what registry key to look at. So you can edit this however you want to look at whatever registry key you want to, and it will show you that registry key on all the devices. So if I want to, I can just sort by device type. And so then this will be able to give me some of that, and I can drill in accordingly and so forth. So some fun stuff. And the last one I will look at is TPM. TPM. That was actually not down here. Let me just scroll on the left-hand side. I can use it. TPM. So I can query all, and same kind of deal. It's going to show me the status of my systems and TPM and whether it's activated and different things. And we could just keep going, on and on and on, with these, kind of learning about our environment, and it's kind of fun, right? Okay. And then just a couple of miscellaneous things about the CMPivot window as we're here. So when you're in the CMPivot window, you have an active session against whatever collection that you're querying against. If you close the CMPivot window, then your query session is done. Right? That seems like a Mr. Obvious thing, and it really is. Right? One reason I tell you that. So you see me running queries, you see results coming back very quickly. I've told you that in order for those results to come back quickly, the device that we're querying has to be online and reachable. Right? Now, what if you're against a collection that you're really trying to pull the best result set, but maybe it's a collection with 500 devices and 450 of them are online, but that leaves 50 that are not, right? Maybe there's servers, I don't know, in the middle of a reboot or whatever, right? And you really want to incorporate as many of those devices in your query as you can. Well, you can run your query and then you can leave the CMPivot window open, which means the session is still active, and we're going to keep trying to run against those devices until we either time out or we actually get a result back. So I mentioned timeout. So what is the query timeout? Well, in the CMPivot window, if you leave the query running for an hour, then the query is going to time out. So no more than an hour. But that gives you enough time if systems are in the middle of a reboot, whatever, or other conditions, to be able to hopefully get them out of that condition and responding to your query in a reasonable amount of time. Right? All right. So let me pull this system out of the screen for a minute. We will move on. So that's the walkthrough, just kind of getting familiar with CMPivot, the way it's laid out, and so on. Now let's talk through some specific in-action types of scenarios, right? So a few scenarios that I want to go through. One, stopping a running service. Two, proactively using CMPivot to identify and resolve application failures. Looking at the BIOS, I already did that, but I want to drill into that again. Free disk space, right? Scenario 5, incident identification and remediation. That one's really interesting that I want to talk to you about. All right, so let's step through those. I'm going to pull this system back in. Okay, scenario 1. I'm just going to leave CMPivot up here, right? Stop a running service. So you may be in a situation, for whatever reason, that you just need to take action on the devices across your network and stop a service, right? By the way, this goes without saying, maybe, but this is a Windows system function only. I mean, ConfigMgr can manage other OSs. This is only for Windows systems that we really would be thinking about stopping services and doing those kinds of things, right? So that said, back to the scenario, we need to stop a service. So think through, maybe there's something wrong with the browser service and we need to stop the browser service and then kind of clear the dust, fix the problem, whatever it is, and then we will go forward. Well, we can use CMPivot to do that quite effectively. So what I'm going to do is just go right up here to Service here, and I'm going to right-click and say Query by Device, right? And so we're going to run the device. And in the name column, whenever it comes back, we should be grouped by device already. Right? Let that run. Okay, good. So now we have a list of services under name. Right? Here's the browser service that I want. So I'm going to right-click on the browser service and say Show Devices With. Right? And so here's the devices that have the browser service. And now that I have the browser service, then I know what devices are there. I could go further and look, whatever I want. But in this case, I want to stop this service. So CMPivot has really taken me as far as I can go. But I do have the ability to multi-select on the device list. And I can right-click. And I do have this Run Script option. Right? So I've already created a script called Stop Service. Now, I'm not going to run it because that's really the end of the demo, but think through. If you identify a service you need to stop, you can quickly pull together systems that have that service going and run a script against it to actually stop the service. Again, scripts use the high-speed notification channel, so it's a very, very quick kind of response, right? This also raises a point. CMPivot is great by itself. This is the first time you've seen me try to run a script. Having the scripts ready to address certain scenarios that you may have historically had to address a different way That's very valuable, right? So think through the kind of things you've had to work through historically, and what scripts you might want to create to help you remediate problems if they happen. And we'll talk about one specific example in a little bit, right? Okay. All right, so that's scenario one. Now, scenario two, proactively resolving application failures. Now, that's a really good scenario. In my lab, which is very simple, I don't have any app crashes. I can run this, and unless something surprises me, I'm not going to have any application failures. So I will just talk through this instead. But imagine a scenario where you just want to proactively run a query to see if there are any application failures, see if there's any commonality between them, time of day, specific apps that are crashing, take remediation, whatever. You can easily do this with CMPivot. And then once you get the results, you can even use the right-click option I showed you earlier to Bing the results and see if there's any known support articles, whatever the case may be. Right? So an example of a really cool proactive kind of scenario you can run with CMPivot. Right? So scenario three, being able to look at the BIOS. So same kind of thing. Let's just go to BIOS. We've already been here. I'm going to right-click and say Query All. Right? And once I get the query results, I'm going to go to the version column. I already think I did this with you a minute ago, but just to keep it going, I'm going to go to the version column and right-click and say Group by Device. So here's my version column. I'm going to group by device. And so these three devices have this particular version of the BIOS. This one device has the other. So then I can drill in very effectively and kind of see what's going on, right? So pretty cool tool to be able to dig in and so on. Scenario four, I think, is pretty cool as well. So let's look at disk space. So let me set this up this way, right? Looking at disk space, you can probably fill in a lot of examples of where that would be beneficial to you. Think about if you're about to send out a big deployment with ConfigMgr, and you need to know that the clients in the target collection have enough free disk space to be able to put that deployment in the cache. Maybe it's a task sequence. Maybe it's a software update, right? With our software updates being larger these days, being cumulative than they have been historically. You know, and you could probably fill in a whole bunch of other scenarios that would make sense. So you have two choices. One choice historically was to just look at the hardware inventory data and see what the disk free space was, and then you could act on that information. And it's pretty reliable. Usually disk space doesn't get chewed up so quickly, but sometimes it can, right? So having a more real-time way to know that the data you're looking at is true as of right now, very helpful, right? So let me just right-click on disk and say Query All. And so this will show me right away the disk configuration, how much free space is there for all of the disks on my devices, 4 devices in my collection, right? So we'll let the query results come back, and we'll be able to see the types of disk and so forth. So I have my machine, C drive, D drive, C drive, D drive. This is interesting. Look, here's an A drive, right? 3.5-inch floppy. We picked that up too. And so what I want to know is specifically, what is my situation with my local hard drive? So I can go ahead and type out a custom query. For this one, I will type it, and hopefully I won't make a typo. Equal, and then local fixed disk. Oops, hit the wrong key. Right, close that, close my parenthesis, and where is not null free space, and then pipe that and order it by free space ascending. So if I type that all right, I can run this query, and we can quickly see just the local fixed disks. I can see all of the space that's available, and this is true as of right now, right? So very, very useful kind of information in scenarios that, again, I mentioned some you can think of yourself. Now, scenario 5, and I want to mention this because of a customer experience that I had recently, and this is just one. I could probably list out several, right? The idea of using CMPivot for incident identification and remediation, right? Now, this one would potentially pull in other things like the Cloud Management Gateway, may not have to, whatever, but let me give you the specific. So there was a particular customer that I was working with that had an incident back whenever WannaCry came out. And it wasn't that they got really impacted, it's that they wanted desperately to make sure they were not going to get impacted. And they were in a configuration that is really not uncommon for most customers even today, where they had a number of their systems that they needed to manage off the network, in either traveling, on vacation, at someone's house, whatever the case may be, and they could not get to these machines to remediate them, right? They couldn't even get to these machines to check them. The ones that were on their network that they could access, they were able to get to and fix. So this whole process to identify and remediate these remote machines, these stragglers, if you will, that they couldn't otherwise manage, took 11 weeks of 24/7 work to be able to get those identified and fixed. Right? Now, imagine if you were to have CMPivot, where you could easily and quickly, for all of those clients that are online on your network, identify the problem and push away those that are fixed and use a script to fix those that needed remediation, right? That has tremendous value all by itself. But then imagine if we were to factor in the Cloud Management Gateway and you could reach out to those systems that are anywhere in the world as long as they have an internet connection. And you could still use that same CMPivot process to identify the problem that you need to fix on those systems, and the same CMPivot scripting process to actually fix them real time, right? Huge benefit. That 11-week, 24/7 series of troubleshooting, right, would have shrunk to maybe a couple of hours, maybe less than that, right? No, but significant difference, both in terms of man hours and in terms of being able to get the environment remediated very, very, very quickly, right? So huge amount of power that you can bring to bear in a scenario such as that, right? All right, so we've walked through CMPivot. We've seen it in action in a few scenarios. We could just add the scenarios where there's value with CMPivot. So a little bit of history. How did we get to where we are? So ConfigMgr 1806, CMPivot was first introduced, right? Very useful, very, very welcome addition even then. 1810 saw a lot of changes actually come in with CMPivot. I want to demonstrate a few things for you. The first one, query results. So you've seen me generate some different results from the queries that I've sent out. My lab is obviously my lab. It's not very big. When you send out queries in a production environment, in 1806, we had a limit of 20,000 rows. Now in 1810, we've changed that, so it's really 100,000 cells, not just limited to 20,000 rows. So that gives us some flexibility, right? So if you have an entity that you're querying that has actually 5 columns, then you can have up to 20,000 rows returned. Makes sense, right? Just do the multiplication. If you have an entity that has 10 columns, you could have up to 10,000 rows returned. And if you have an entity with 2 columns, that would be 50,000, right? So you kind of see a little bit more flexibility there. Be aware, though, that there is a limit. So if you're in a really large environment, you may or may not exceed that limit. It would take a lot of machines in a collection to exceed that limit, but sometimes there are a lot of machines in a collection. So be aware. The create collection, I was going to demonstrate that to you. In fact, I will, just in case someone wants to see it again. Right, so let me pull in the machine, and I was just talking about whenever you run CMPivot and you get a result set, then you do have the ability to create a collection. That was added as of 1810, so I'm going to query all, and so I can get a result, and the result set can be whatever you want it to be, right? You can find machines that don't have a particular thing or do have a particular thing or whatever you ultimately want. This is just a really quick one to show you. And then once you get your results set and pivot into it and really get to the machines that you want, you can create a collection. It'll take you into your create collection wizard, but a number of things will be filled out. So in this case, the limiting collection will be CMPivot. So in the other one, it was all systems, but now it's on CMPivot because that's the collection I'm focused on, right? And if we go forward, you'll see the collection rules are direct membership rules, and there's just the 4, right? So now it doesn't mean you always have to have the full membership of your collection in the result set. In this case, I happen to. So for example, if I wanted to group by device and just see these two devices, now I can create I can go into this and pull up my machines. I have 3, so I'm going to go create the collection. I'll call this test again. It's still limited to CMPivot demo, and then now I have 3 machines as the direct membership, right? So that's a pretty useful thing to be able to go create your collections for other purposes, maybe as a result of what you get in CMPivot. We also have added the ability for queries to be saved. So if you're finding yourself using a particular query a lot, instead of having to recreate it every time, you can just save it and reuse it without a problem, right? High speed versus state messages. So I've mentioned this already, but just to say it again. Whenever you run a query, you're going to retrieve a result set. That result set comes back either by the query or by a script that you send as a result, whatever, right? If your result set is less than 80 KB, then you're going to return that result set by the high-speed notification channel. If it's greater than 80 KB, then you're going to return that result set through a state message and processing of that state message. So a little bit of difference. The notification channel is viewed as more efficient, faster, and then hopefully that 80K limit will be allowing you to use the notification channel for most query results, but just know that is a difference in 1810. Now, another one that's really interesting is the ability, you've seen me run a few queries. Now, I want to show you running those queries graphically. So let me pull back in my lab, and I'm just going to copy and paste a query real quick. And by the way, these queries that I'm using are actually in the documentation, so it's a really handy guide. Let me just show you. So I'm just going to paste this query in. Notice at the bottom, render bar chart. So instead of the tabular form, I'm just going to run the query. It's going to go run and show me CCM recently used applications, the apps that have been recently used. It's going to show me a bar chart that I can then leverage. Now, interesting about the bar chart, the color here actually does matter, right? If you have a color of dark blue, then it's going to mean, I think it means real-time data, and the light blue is cache data. So you can even see that here. There's some cache data right here, and some darker blue here, and so on. So you can interpret that accordingly. I have that written down somewhere coming up, and I'll verify that. I think dark blue is real-time live data, and light blue is the cache. But if it's different, I will let you know. Another one that you can do is a pie chart. You can do a column chart too, which I will show you in just a minute. But here's a pie chart, just or that's a time chart actually, not pie chart yet. I'm going to run that. And where did it fail? Probably have a syntax error in here somewhere. Let me fix it. Yes, I had included a copy command. Here, let me run that. Okay, so I got rid of the extra line, and so we will see a time chart here in just a second. Again, it won't be very exciting because it's my lab, but we'll at least see the results that return. Okay. And while we're waiting on that, yeah, so looks like I didn't really get much of anything, which probably doesn't surprise me in my lab, but let's just see. Yeah, I didn't expand that. Yeah, I didn't get anything. Doesn't surprise me, but you can use a time chart. Let me show you the pie chart here. So this one will be boring as well. And so I just get a 2-piece pie because I only have 2 operating systems and I only have 4 systems, so 2 of each in my lab. But you can use this very, very effectively to pull back the details and so on, right? Okay. Now let's keep going. So I've already mentioned that hardware inventory you can absolutely use with really any class you have, your own custom, default, whatever you like. And by the way, I did confirm that it is dark blue is real time and light blue is cached data. Whenever you see those differences in shades in your graphical representations. So I've already done this. I'll do it again. I'm just going to run another query, right? You get this spread out. just against logical disk, I'll run that query, and you can see the data. Again, it's kind of a shaded blue, so you know that that is cache data. Dark blue, again, is live data. But either way, right, the results come back very effectively, and so on. Now, this is specifically focusing on a hardware inventory class, and notice the color just changed, right? And so that is the live data coming back, and so on. There are some limitations with hardware inventory. So, for example, there are certain things in hardware inventory that aren't supported, such as array properties, things like an IP address, right? Real32 and Real64 data, embedded object properties, those kinds of things not supported, right? Another thing that's really important with hardware inventory is your inventory entity names must begin with a character. So if you have any custom entity names that begin with a numeral or some other character, then you won't see them displayed here. So make sure that your entities do begin with a character. And then if your entities are the same name, or you're trying to create one of the same name as a default entity, that's not going to work either. It has to be a custom thing. All right. And then another change that's in here is in terms of audit status messages. We've added those. So let's go to monitoring, and I will go to system status, and then status message query. So I have a couple of options. I can use either this one, or I can create my own status message. The key is that the status message will be of an ID 40805. So let me just go and enter this and tell it a day ago or whatever, that's fine, and run that, right? And I see a slew of 40805s, and I can highlight over this and see. Now, let me just double click on it and bring it up so we can look at it. Now, you see user tailspin toys ran script with this GUID, with a hash of this hash on a particular collection. Now, if I know what script that I've run, then I should, in theory, be able to go trace that script. So let me pull in one of my machines that I've been running on, and we'll take a look. Now, the script store folder is a pretty protected place generally, but let's just go in here and see if we can see anything at all. So if I go into my C drive, Windows, CCM, and then script store, so I do see that I have my script in here, right? 7 Delta Charlie, and I compare that to my status message here, 7 Delta Charlie, the script hash, and so on. I could even try to open this up, and wow, look, I can't do it, right? You've got to have the right kind of permission to do that. Again, we protect this area really, really, really well, right? So, but that is a script that is being run on behalf of CMPivot. Oh, and while I'm here, I'll just show you. You might think, I'll just copy this out. Great, so I'll copy it and then go out here and paste it and see if I can open it, but we don't even allow that, right? So we do try to protect this area pretty well, but you can at least see the script that has been executing there. And while I'm on the client, I can see the log of the script running. I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself a bit, but hey, that's okay. I do that sometimes. And so if I go to scripts log right here, then I can see some of these things executing. So let's scroll to the bottom. There we go. So results are being sent for script here. So executing command line and so on. And then this is looking for this particular script, and it's passing in a blob of data here, and it's so on, right? So you can troubleshoot it. You can watch the flow. Some things are protected for sure, but you would want them that way. And so there you go. Just wanted to show that to you. So let's go ahead and get rid of this and pull this out to the side. All right. And there's other things. So I've put in some of the highlights that I wanted to show you, but if you go look at the documentation, there's some other things that are added here in 1810 as well. And then we get to 1902. And the big thing with 1902 is now, if you are in a hierarchy that has a CAS, you can execute these CMPivot queries directly from the CAS, and then the CAS knows how to farm those queries out to the primary. It doesn't change the fact that the primary still runs the queries and the communication to the client, but but the CAS is a source for you. And I've already mentioned this, but just to mention it again, maybe you will wonder, how does that information actually get down to the primary? Does it use SQL replication? The answer is no. It uses the high-speed communication channel between the CAS and the primary. Now, a little bit of minutia here. If you have a CAS and you have a remote SQL server or provider that is remote, or maybe using SQL always on, then you may need to tweak a little bit of additional permissions. It kind of introduces there a double hop kind of scenario. Need to work with some maybe constrained delegation, whatever, things I'm not going to get into here, but at least be aware of that. All right, troubleshooting tips and tricks. So again, mentioned this already, but I'm going to talk through this a little bit. So when you have a CMPivot query, there is a timeout. That timeout is 1 hour. Knowing that will help you, as you're executing these queries, know how long you might want to let a query run to try to scoop up those clients that are offline, whatever, right? Cloud Management Gateway, mentioned that the Cloud Management Gateway is absolutely fully supported. Mentioned also that you can watch script execution in the console. Let me pull the console in again real quick. If you just go to monitoring, well, if I can maximize this, if you just go to monitoring and then go to, I'll just shortcut it, go to overview and go to script status, then you can see the status of any scripts that you might be running as a part of CMPivot or whatever, reporting back the results here, right? Another thing that I think is interesting, let me pull this back out of the window, right, is the way that you can use this. Again, there's no way that I can cover every eventuality of things that might be useful. But I know that there's a lot of customers out there that use software updates monthly or deploy software updates monthly, want to know the status of software updates. Very often they will be waiting for results to come back, state messages, whatever. CMPivot offers you a really nice way to be able to just go get the data that you care about right now and not wait on state messages or the infrastructure to process things up. Let me show you one example. Actually, I list two on the screen. I will just run the first one. So this one is one in my environment. I know that this particular KB is needed. It's for Silverlight. Let me go back to my collection, CMPivot, demo, run CMPivot, and then I'll just paste in this particular query. There we go. So I'm just going to run this. Oh, yeah, I can't do that. Sorry, the quotes don't come over. I have to replace those so that they're syntactically correct. There we go. Let's try it again. All right, so I'm going to run that, and we're going to see, I believe, unless something's changed in my lab, one machine come back that needs Silverlight. And this is real-time data. This isn't waiting on things to process and the infrastructure to snap in and to summarize and all those things. This is real-time data that will tell us right away what the current state on that system is. So, in fact, I did get back one client, and I know that it needs it. The query looks like it's still in process, but I will go look at that, and we will see, yeah, here's the Silverlight update. It's the right KB, and this is needed, and so on. And again, we could spend forever here in doing demos that probably are going to be relevant to your environment, and so on, but we will move on. One other one, so the IP address, right? I encountered this in my lab setting this up. And that is that whenever we communicate with a machine, obviously we're going to try to reach it by IP address. And so if the IP address in DNS is not current, then there could be some issues because of that. It shouldn't be a widespread issue, but just make sure if you're not communicating with a client that you check to make sure that you're able to ping it and get the right IP address back and so on, right? Okay. So the last thing, to kind of talk about tracing. So we can trace this. I've already kind of jumped ahead and shown you some of that. I just talked through one of the things I was going to mention. I'll mention it again. Just be aware of the different pathways that data will take. So when you send a CMPivot query, it's going to be sent by the high-speed notification channel. When the query results return, if the query result is less than 80 KB, that query result itself comes back with the high-speed notification channel. If it's greater than 80 KB, it's going to come back through state messages. You can see all of this in the logs. Let me pull back in, start on the server side. pull back in. And so I've executed a number of queries through this process. If I go to my logs, the BGB server log is a key one. This will show the push notifications going out to the client. So I'm just going to go and look real quick. And, okay, starting to send push task finished. So if we raise that higher, we see some detail. We see the task ID, the push ID, the task GUID, and so on. We see some what looks to be encrypted data here that's being sent down, and something we can at least track that it got down to the client. Right? There's a couple of other logs on the server side that are there. So the SMS prob log, that's one that any console action you're taking really is recorded there. There's the state sys log. So if your data is coming back through a state message, that's where you would look to see if that information processed. Right. Also on the client side, we have logs to kind of trace what's going on. So let me just pull in my one of my clients. And so looking again at the logs. All right, Windows CCM logs. So a couple there. We're going to have the CCM notification agent. That's right here. And this will receive the push across the high-speed channel and communicate back as well. So we can see keep alive messages, and on we go. And if I scroll up in here, I will quickly see one of my push messages being received. Receive task from the server, push ID, here's the detail, and blah, 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 right? And so it goes and does its thing, and the data will then flow back up to the site server, whichever channel it needs, state message or whatever. There is the state message log, so we could quickly go down to that and see if we see any state message activity that might correlate to the time frame that we care about. So here's state message. See if we scroll down to that. So there definitely are some state message things. Again, I'm not going to dig into that to see. I would highly doubt if state messages are actually coming through to carry my payload back, because I have such a small log. But these or small environment, but these are useful logs to be able to know what's going on, right? Scripts, I've already shown you that, where you can actually watch the scripts execute live on a device, right? Okay, and so back to the site server. So if we know the logs and we know all the different push IDs and things that we care about, we could actually take it into the database if we needed to. And I'm just going to brush the hem of the garment on this, but I want to show it to you. Sorry, wrong one. Here we go. And we could follow it in and make sure that we know what's going on, right, all the way through. So if I log in, there we go, and connect in, there are two sets of tables that are interesting, right? There's the BGB tables, that's the high-speed notification channel that all of this flows through, and I just passed a few. Here's one of the key ones, BGB push, right? So if I look at that one, I will see that here's the push ID, here's the push time, what type, what server, on we go, right? And then there's a few CMPivot specific tables that we could kind of drill into and see what's going on. Keep going past the underscore, and here they are, a couple of them. Right now, I show that to you only for education purposes. Certainly, if you're working or think you need to work at the database level, that's not something to do without Microsoft support. It's kind of an unsupported territory, certainly, to make any changes. But I do show that to you at least for education purposes. Right? All right, so let's get that out of the picture. And that's really it. Right? So CMPivot, incredibly powerful tool, one that every config manager admin, I think, would benefit from using and learning and leveraging across your environment. So we will wrap the session up here and see you next time.